This is A New Angle, a show about cool people doing awesome things in and around Montana. I'm your host, Justin Angle. This show is supported by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. Hey folks, welcome back, and thanks for tuning in. Today, I am speaking with Dr. Reid Humphrey, who sits at the threshold of retirement after a long and winding academic career. Reid has held nearly every academic position possible at universities, and there's not much he hasn't seen.
I developed Health and Medicine, and that was an initiative that I started specifically to promote interdisciplinary programs and also to create an identity for UM.
A few weeks ago, Reid asked if I would be interested in kicking the tires of higher education, and naturally, I said I'd love to. Reid, thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Justin, for having me.
Yeah, so tell us, where did you grow up and what did your parents do?
I grew up in Pennsylvania, born in central PA, but then early on in elementary school, we moved to Pittsburgh. My mother was a steel worker. My father worked for the highway department, sort of a self-taught engineer.
Yeah.
And we were there through, I was there through the 8th grade. But I have to say, I didn't have a lot of traction intellectually to think about college as an option because I grew up in downriver Pittsburgh,
right,
along the oil-soaked Monongahela at the time, right?
Was it flammable at that point?
No, that comment comes up all the time, Justin. But I'm laying that on Ohio and the rivers of Ohio. Although I will say, yes, it probably was flammable. No one had the presence of mind to toss a match in.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. So at what point did you decide college was for you?
Well, I got traction my junior year of high school,
okay,
and then it started to look better to me. My father was a World War II vet who'd gone through the European theater, and he made it quite clear that I would not be going to the service. I did pretty well my junior and senior year, got some traction, and applied to colleges because I applied to colleges where my friends applied to colleges. I had no idea what I would do. I wanted to go to Penn State, which was 10 miles away. But at that time, there was a housing shortage at Penn State. So I ended up actually starting at Lock Haven State College,
okay,
which was only about 25 miles away. And I majored in history as a freshman because that was my favorite high school teacher, which is probably what a lot of people do, who don't have a lot of direction. And after a semester, it struck me that history was a lot of reading. And they were making more of it every day. Like I would never catch up. So
that's a good way to look at it.
But Lock Haven was also a really great place to start college.
Yeah.
It was really laid back. But I was a physical education major, and as I often say, my goal was to graduate, teach physical education, coach track and field, and paint houses in the summertime.
Okay.
When I graduated, none of those options were available. So I started applying to graduate schools for a master's degree, and I applied to some, kind of traditional Big Ten PE schools, and none of them could come through with aid. And then, in an incredible stroke of fortune, I was in my apartment, and I got a phone call, and it was from my undergraduate exercise physiology advisor, who informed me he had a colleague who had just taken over a program at Wake Forest, University of North Carolina,
right,
and had a couple of fellowships available. Would I be interested? And I said, well, of course. But I knew nothing about Wake Forest. But I looked on the map and I found it. I got there and I enrolled in their health and sports science program, which was the master's degree in PE. And my second year in, or maybe it's halfway through my first year in, we were the recipients of a very large grant to study exercise and cardiovascular disease. And this was the mid-'70s. It was not, that was a therapy that didn't have a lot of traction at the time.
Right.
I finished in 1976, and then I still had one more year in the grant, so I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, and started that was part of the grant, was to start a community-based program based on what we had done at Wake. And then my career just sort of turned at that point. I really enjoyed working with patients with cardiovascular disease. That became my focus. I stopped thinking about teaching at that point.
Okay.
And actually embarked, the next 4 years I spent at developing outpatient programs in hospital.
Like, at what point did becoming an academic become interesting to you?
In about the fourth year of clinical work, I was in Michigan at the time, and I started to do more teaching at the community level, and I thought, I really want to continue to pursue this work.
Okay.
So I was offered a fellowship back at the University of Pittsburgh for my PhD.
Mm-hmm.
So after 4 years of clinical work, I went back to University of Pittsburgh, finished in 5 years, and then had started my academic journey at that point.
Sure. And research at that point had become, you had mentioned teaching as a driving motivation, but research became part of the equation as well?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Research had to be part of the equation at Pittsburgh and the Human Energy Research Lab there. Mm-hmm. I directed the cardiac program while I was there. And then I was offered a tenure track position at Virginia Tech, actually, after 1 year. And then directed their cardiac center at Virginia Tech.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was on the tenure track, trajectory.
Right. And here comes this word that has been bantered about here in Missoula over the years, and that is this dreaded term, retrenchment. What is that, and what was your experience with it?
Yeah, retrenchment I don't think was actually, I'm not even sure they invented the term.
Oh, okay.
But
it happened to you.
the impact was the same, right? So actually there's a parallel actually to UM, because I was teaching in the exercise science group.
Yep.
And that department was in the College of Education. As health and human performance at UM was back in the up until about 2019 as part of education as well. 2 years into my tenure track appointment, Virginia had a draconian budget crisis,
right?
Because they're kind of beltway driven,
mm-hmm.
and so there was a across the board 10% reduction to expenses on college campuses, and the dean of our College of Education at the time and his working group determined that conveniently 10% of the college's budget was exercise science. So there was a convenient conclusion reached that the College of Education wouldn't support programs that weren't directly preparing teachers.
Okay, so looks good on a spreadsheet.
It looks good on a spreadsheet, but here's the part that informed my career and also was rather stunning was when we met with the dean. And the dean, because we presented the data, and the data showed we generated more student credit hours, we had more majors than anybody else in the college, and I will never forget the response, which was, "My job is to reduce expenses. I'm not to be concerned with revenue."
Wow.
And, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
So all the tenure track faculty were informed they had 2 years to find something new. And I was super lucky because I landed on my feet. And to close the book on that story, actually, at the 11th hour, after I had made a commitment to go somewhere else, and so did my other tenure track colleagues, the president of Virginia Tech, and the provost, probably was provost, looked at the program and said, "Well, we're just going to move it somewhere else. We can't lose those student credit hours or those majors."
That revenue.
So it moved to nutrition and became a new College of Nutrition, Exercise Science, and has flourished.
And so that's the moment you head west.
No.
Okay.
No. But I will say, as I told my colleagues here, when I was wrapping up as provost here, it's not hard to tell your 3-year-old that you just lost your job, but it's not so easy to tell your partner who's been at your side for the last 5 or 6 years, making ends meet, because retrenchment, losing your position, whether it's in academics or any walk of life, is devastating on a lot of levels, right? So in higher ed, it's particularly, I think, complicated because of the investment people put into preparation for an academic career.
Absolutely.
But you've got to be prepared to pivot. One door closes, another door opens kind of story.
So let's fast forward to when you land at UM. What made this place attractive to you at that point?
Well, Justin, I always wanted to run my own shop.
Okay.
And so I was a faculty member, and again, promoted through the ranks. I was, in 2002, when I moved west, I was at Idaho State. and made full professor there. And we sort of had a handshake agreement that I would chair that program.
Okay.
But when we got to like year 3 or so, it became more apparent that that was probably not in the cards and wasn't exactly the kind of program that I really wanted to invest myself in. And that's got nothing to do with ISU per se, but I was really looking for a program that had more of a research element to it. But the chair position opened up at UM in 2005 or 6, and I applied and was hired. And
you come in as a professor, but also a department chair.
Yeah.
What's it like to come into a new institution but in an administrative and faculty role at the same time?
I mean, there's a difference depending on the universities, right? When I was at Virginia Commonwealth Medical College of Virginia, there the chair is an administrator with faculty responsibilities.
Yeah.
UM is very different, right? UM is you're a faculty member with administrative responsibilities, which makes it especially challenging. And I've always said that I think the hardest job on this campus is chair.
You've had every job. I want to know which one you think is the best and which one you think is the hardest. So it sounded like chair is, in your view, one of the more challenging constructions.
Yeah, it's super challenging, right? Because you're encumbered with leadership.
Yeah.
At the same time that you're evaluating your colleagues, right? And
without a whole lot of power over their outcomes.
It actually is it's a remarkable growing experience.
Yeah.
Because for me, developing the qualities of leadership and knowing, like, you got to be able, like, there's a great quote that, and I can't think of whom to attribute to, said, like, the future is not invisible. Threads of its design are readily available. And so as a chair here, I'm looking at the threads of design around the future of physical therapy and how do we ensure that we're going to admit the best students at UM and still, like, be aligned with our mission to be accessible and meet the healthcare needs of Montana. And so I have all of that to think about while I'm also getting to know my faculty and think about how we brand ourselves. And we went through that process too. I mean, it was a bit of a hot mess in 2006. The program was challenging. Probably not a surprise that they were looking for an external chair. And
that sends a signal.
I took that on. Actually, there is of course there are a million side stories, right? But one was that I had was that there was a national poll going on about how long I would last at UM.
A national poll?
Yeah, among physical therapists. It's not, it's a kind of a tight academic community, right?
Yeah.
And of course, somehow I managed to miss all that.
Yeah.
But I was told that the near-term bet was 2 weeks, the long was 2 years, and I was chair for 8.
Right.
But I learned a lot through that. Like, one was that culture change comes slowly, right? That really being transparent with your faculty and convincing them that what you hope to do with that program will align with their own trajectory.
Sure.
Right? We went through a lot over the course of the first several years, but I also had the good fortune of taking over in a profession where there's great need.
Yeah.
And so you're not really, like, building from the ground up. You're just really tinkering with the plane while you're flying it.
We'll be back to my conversation with Reid Humphrey after this short break. A New Angle is proudly presented by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. This show does not happen without these pillars of our community, and I'm so grateful for their support and encouragement. And speaking of support, have you checked out our new website yet? anewanglepodcast.com. There you can support our show directly with a variety of subscription options. Subscribers get access to bonus episodes, additional segments, writings, and other benefits. So check it out at anewanglepodcast.com.
This is University of Montana President Seth Bodner, and you're listening to A New Angle.
Welcome back to A New Angle. I'm speaking with Reid Humphrey about lessons learned during a long academic career. At what point does the dean job start appealing to you? Did you pursue the dean job? Did it come to you?
I did not pursue it until it came to me. Actually,
Okay.
So my end game was for chair, and as it turned out for dean, was always like a decade. Like, course, humans invented time, right? So, but I always thought that like whether you're doing a good job or a poor job or an intermediate job, 10 years is a good time to turn the keys over to the minibus and let somebody else drive. And I was entering year 8 as a chair, and I'd let the faculty know that I had probably a couple more years in the wheelhouse. And then Dave Forbes, who was dean at the time, decided to retire and encouraged me to apply for the position. So I did. That was 2014. 13, 14. Yeah,
we met in there somewhere, and I think I met you when you were just becoming dean.
Yeah, would have been. I took over as dean in 2014.
Okay.
And that was complicated too. It was, at that time, the College of Health Professions and Biomedical Sciences was largely pharmacy driven. That's where all the funding was. That's where the strongest program was.
Center of power in many ways too.
Yeah, right. And so there was an accreditation requirement for pharmacy that they would be led by a dean. So I didn't really check the boxes as a pharmacist or pharmaceutical scientist, but I got the job, right? So then it became, how do I navigate like accreditation with pharmacy? And we did that. We worked our way through that, and now we have a dean, Matt Fade, who's pharmaceutical sciences, so he checks all the boxes. He's real, and he's also came with the experience of teaching at a university that had multiple programs like ours.
So, in your time at dean, this is sort of when I was starting to kind of get to know you, get to know your work, start to understand a little bit, not sure that I understand it at all, but how universities operate. And my sense is that you were sort of building, I don't know, we've bounced around with a bunch of different terms for these sorts of things, but center of excellence in a way. Like there was a need for people in the state that were skilled in a variety of health professions. And had a lot of capacity in this space, and it seemed like you created a framework to organize the many things we do in this space. How did that unfold?
Yeah, so 2014, the College of Health Professions and Biomedical Sciences, it was a cluster of programs that that included pharmacy and physical therapy and social work and a fledgling program, public health, three faculty members, I believe. But of course, I already knew, having arrived in 2006, that we had really, and my background, exercise science, was really strong health programs across the campus. Speech language, pathology, and health and human performance were embedded in the College of Education. Right. And we had 8 2-year programs at Missoula College that are really, really good programs, from respiratory therapy to RN and the like, Surge Tech and others. But we weren't really interconnected. And, it doesn't really matter whether you're a campus of 50,000 or a campus of 5,000. When your academic units are in different colleges, you don't have the same level of interconnectedness, right?
Somebody who doesn't understand higher ed can understand that. You're in different systems you're almost in different businesses entirely.
Exactly. And, the way UM is structured, we didn't even, and to this point, we still don't really have a strong level of joint appointments, like that kind of climate. And I came from that climate at VCU. I was a faculty member in physical therapy, but I had joint appointments in exercise science, and joint appointments in education. And
joint appointments, for the listener, just means that you're sort of a member of two different parts of the institution.
Right.
Like on my dissertation committee at University of Washington, I had several members that were joint appointments from psychology and the business school of Washington.
And there are different ways to approach that, right? You can have a joint appointment where actually part of your FTE or your full-time equivalent is actually in a different department.
Right.
These were largely courtesy appointments, but it permitted me, to be in their faculty meetings, to work with them on research projects, advisor, and the like. And when I looked across the landscape at our funding was increasing across, across the campus, but we just weren't connected. So it was 2016, I think, that I developed Health and Medicine, and that was an initiative that I started specifically to promote interdisciplinary programs, and also to create an identity for We just started a family medical residency program here as well. and our public health program was beginning to grow. And the exercise science group here was doing really good work. Brent Ruby and his group and John Quinn and others were doing great work. So we started Health and Medicine, which we still have. We can get to that later. But so I started that within the College of Health, but it was always designed to be a cross-campus initiative.
Yeah.
And when I did that, I was very clear that it was not designed to create structural changes at But in 2019, we did have that opportunity. I was asked by the provost, the interim provost, it was Beverly Edmond at the time, and she said, if you could draw the map, what would it look like? And I said, I'd like to have health and human performance and speech language.
So meaning a reorganization of programs. If you were to select from all these programs on the campus, which ones would you have?
Right. I made a pitch for those two programs.
Yeah.
And I also made a pitch for psychology, but Provost Edmond at the time appropriately said, it's kind of a big bite out of the apple. Right? So let's not do that. But
that's the largest major on campus.
I know. Yeah, I know. They're in the building, physically in the building, in the same building we are. And we have strong clinical.
Sure.
And we have strong connections to clinical psych and the like, and they were admittedly, they're really an important element for H&S, right? So, good fortune was that we were able to realign health, human performance and speech language, and then ultimately speech language and occupational sciences, which our OT program is just about to start. And then I was able to navigate a change in the name of the college to move from the College of Health Professions and Biomedical Sciences to the College of Health. As a tongue-in-cheek, when I addressed the Board of Regents, I just wanted a name tag that people could read from a distance. Right. So we became the College of Health, and which is now like 9 centers and institutes and 7 different schools. We got a PA program coming. OT launches this fall. But that really, and I think when I look back through that lens, that realignment really permitted us to do so much more in an interdisciplinary way. We have a really strong interprofessional education program now. So because in the hospitals, that's how it works. Like you go into a hospital, you're going to see this, the speech language pathologist is working with the occupational therapist, physical therapist, and the like. And so we wanted to train them that way also. And now, if you look across that landscape, you'll see. Like the physical therapy program now have several faculty members with strong joint appointments, and now it's integrated physiology in athletic training, which used to be HHP.
Right.
HHP begat IPAT, right? Health and human performance became, rebranded as integrated physiology and athletic training, and the Neural Injury Center, which I also started back in, 2011 or 12, which is focused on rehabilitation from head injury and the like. Has really blossomed, and it blossomed because when we were able to bring IPAT into the college, I could bring athletic concussion work into the work we were doing with veterans, and a very different kind of head injury, but the same sequelae of problems.
Yeah.
Right?
So let's pull the lens back a little bit on this.
Sure.
What you're describing, Reid, is a trajectory of innovation and reorganization that makes some sense, right? I'm sure a listener can sort of intuit that, like, oh yeah, putting all of these health-oriented parts of the university in the same space makes some sense. Does not have a reputation for innovation, at least not in the way it constructs itself. Maybe you push back on that premise, but it doesn't. You've been able to make some things change and move around on this campus at a time where other parts of the campus haven't been able to make significant changes.
I think is as innovative as it is permitted to be, and I shouldn't. Maybe that's not the right.
What does that even
maybe
mean?
That's not the right adjective either. But the way the university, and this will lead into conversations about provost.
Yes, exactly.
And executive leadership, right? So universities that are really innovative are not just vertically oriented. They're horizontally oriented, but there has to be vertical organization as well, right? And this university has been challenged in terms of executive leadership and on the academic side of the house. I think that I worked for 3 three permanent presidents, and Sheila Stearns was interim. But when I arrived, it was George Dennison. Roy Sangstrom was president, and then Sheila, and then Seth, right? And I think we've had good leadership at the presidential level. I do.
Yeah, since 2018, Seth's been here. It's been a long tenure.
Yeah, it has been. And I had the privilege of working with Seth, during the 2 years of COVID while I was provost, and which leads to a conversation about how do we have such a long line of provosts.
We should press on that. The provost at the University of Montana it's a fancy term for chief academic officer, essentially. Right. You're the top executive of running the academic affairs of the institution. You served in that role for a couple of years. Talk about how you came into that position.
Sure. Yeah. And it was 2020, actually, coincidentally, right around the beginning of the pandemic.
Yes.
And Provost Harbor, who had been here just shy of 2 years, made the decision to leave, return to Indiana. So I met with John. He asked me if I had a few extra minutes at the end of our one-on-one, and I said, sure. I was dean of the College of Health at the time. And John had called me and said he needed to discuss a personnel matter. So I immediately going through like my mental Rolodex of like who are we going to be talking about in my college that has run afoul of academic misconduct. And John allowed to me that he had decided to move home, and I thought to myself, why wouldn't you just tell everyone at the same time? This seems like an awkward way to announce your departure. And then he mentioned that the President Bodner would be calling later in the afternoon, and he was looking for some advice. And I thought, I'm good at giving advice. Of course, what it really was President Bodner asking me if I would step up in the provost role, and we agreed at the time that it was. For me, it was a role of service. I did not have aspirations to be a permanent provost.
Okay.
And we initially started talking about a 6-month term, which I suggested it probably should be a year just to enhance the stability on campus. And of course, that ended up being 2 years. But I had always intended to return to the deanship. So I did ask to be acting provost, even though there's really not a distinction per se between interim and acting.
Sure.
I felt like I would have I could have gained better ground as an acting provost.
Branding. Right?
Yeah, it was branding. And I used to say, UM didn't invent the term interim, but we may have perfected it over the years.
Well, yeah. I mean, we can leave perfection up to debate. But speaking of that, I mean, it begs the question, UM has had a number of provosts in the last several years. Having now spent a couple years in that position without the ambition to hold on to it long term, do you have an explanation for why it appears to be that UM has a hard time hanging on to provosts?
I have an explanation that's grounded in my own experience, right?
Stay tuned for part 2 of this conversation with Reid Humphrey next week. Thanks for listening to A New Angle. If you like what we do and want to support us directly, please consider a subscription at anewanglepodcast.com. A New Angle is recorded at Studio 49, a generous gift from UM alums Michelle and Lauren Hansen. Our presenting sponsors are First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. Kelly Larson is our producer. Maddie Jordan is our production assistant. VTO, Jeff Ament, and John Wicks made our music, and Jeff Meese is our master of all things sound. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.